You're standing on the sand. The water is cold, rising to your knees. In front of you, 300 meters of open beach stretches to the base of a steep cliff. Above you, concrete fortifications bristle with machine guns. Behind you, the English Channel churns with the bodies of your comrades. This is Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944. This is hell. What you're about to discover is not the sanitized version taught in history books. It's not the heroic Hollywood depiction. It's the cold, calculated truth about why Omaha Beach became a perfect killing funnel, a death trap designed by geography, reinforced by German engineering, and enabled by catastrophic Allied intelligence failures. By the end of this hour, you'll understand why the first waves of American soldiers faced a 90% casualty rate in some sectors, and how a series of seemingly small oversights created one of the deadliest killing fields of World War II. Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe, was the largest amphibious invasion in history. 5 beaches stretched across 50 miles of Normandy coastline, Utah and Omaha for the Americans, Gold, Juno and Sword for the British and Canadians. Each presented unique challenges, but none compared to Omaha, a 5-mile stretch of sand that would earn the bloody nickname Bloody Omaha. To understand why Omaha was so deadly, you need to see it through German eyes. Major General Erwin Rommel, tasked with fortifying the Atlantic Wall, recognized what the Allies had underestimated, that this particular stretch of coastline was a natural killing ground. The beach itself was a crescent-shaped curve, 200-300 meters wide at low tide, bordered by steep bluffs rising 30-50 meters. At each end, rocky cliffs created natural choke points. Any landing force would be funneled into a confined space with limited escape routes. You're looking at what the Germans saw, an amphitheatre of death. 4 draws, natural valleys cutting through the bluffs provided the only exits from the beach. The Germans fortified these draws with concrete casemates, machine gun nests, and anti-tank weapons. They didn't need to cover every inch of the beach, they just needed to control the exits. Any soldiers who survived the initial landing would be trapped in a shooting gallery with nowhere to hide. The German 352nd Infantry Division, a battle-hardened unit that had fought on the Eastern Front, defended this sector. Unlike other coastal divisions, this wasn't a static unit of older men or foreign conscripts. These were experienced soldiers, many of whom had been fighting the Russians for years. They knew how to kill efficiently. Under the command of General Dietrich Kreis, these troops had spent months transforming the natural advantages of Omaha into a fortress of death. They laid over 2 million mines, installed thousands of wooden stakes and metal tripods to destroy landing craft, and positioned 8 concrete casemates housing 75 mm and 88 mm guns with overlapping fields of fire. Machine gun positions were carefully calculated to create interlocking killing zones. From their elevated positions, German defenders could see every movement on the beach below, but the American planners saw something different. Their intelligence suggested the German defenders would be the 716th Infantry Division, a static unit of older men with little combat experience. They estimated no more than 800 to 1,000 defenders in the entire Omaha sector. The reality, over 7,000 battle-hardened German soldiers from the 352nd Division were waiting. The intelligence failures went deeper. Aerial reconnaissance had missed the true strength of the German fortifications. The thick hedgerows behind the beach obscured the German positions from aerial view. Cloud cover during key reconnaissance missions further compromised the intelligence picture. The Americans would attack blind. The plan called for a massive naval and aerial bombardment to soften the defenses before the landing. 32,000 tons of bombs and shells would be unleashed on the German positions. But here, too, things went wrong. The naval bombardment was shortened to maintain surprise, and most of the shells fell short, landing harmlessly in the sea. The aerial bombers, fearing hitting the approaching landing craft, delayed their bomb release by several seconds. Most bombs landed inland, leaving the beach defenses virtually intact. Imagine yourself now in one of those landing craft. The sea is rough, waves crash over the sides. You're seasick, terrified, carrying 80 pounds of equipment. The door drops, and you're hit with the reality of your situation. The beach ahead is open, exposed, and pockmarked with obstacles. The Germans above open fire. You have 300 meters of open sand to cross before reaching any cover. Your comrades are falling around you. The first wave landed at 6:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944. The tide was rising, which meant the obstacles weren't fully exposed as planned. Many landing craft hit mines or obstacles before reaching the beach. Those that made it to shore dropped their ramps into deep water, and soldiers, weighed down by equipment, drowned within yards of the beach. Colonel Joseph Balkowski, a military historian, explains, "The geography of Omaha Beach created a natural funnel effect. The bluffs on both sides prevented lateral movement. The limited exits meant that soldiers who survived the initial landing were concentrated in specific areas, making them easier targets for the German defenders above. In Sector Dog Green, Company A of the 116th Regiment was nearly annihilated within minutes of landing. Among them was Technical Sergeant Frank Peregrine. As his comrades fell around him, Peregrine single-handedly charged a German machine gun position, killing the crew with his bayonet. He was killed moments later by another machine gun. He posthumously received the Medal of Honor, but his sacrifice barely made a dent in the German defenses. Those who survived the initial onslaught found what little cover they could behind a small shingle embankment at the base of the bluffs. This created another aspect of the killing funnel. Survivors were concentrated in a small area, making them easy targets for German mortars and artillery. You're trapped, with the sea behind you and fortified cliffs in front. The tide is rising, shrinking your available space. Every movement draws fire. The medical situation was catastrophic. Medics couldn't operate effectively under fire. The wounded couldn't be evacuated. The incoming tide brought in more landing craft, but also threatened to drown the injured who couldn't move. The beach became a chaotic mix of the dead, the dying, and those desperately seeking cover. From above, the German defenders had an almost perfect view of the killing field they had created. Their positions were carefully arranged to provide overlapping fields of fire. Machine guns could sweep the entire beach lengthwise. Mortars could target the shingle embankment where survivors clustered. The defenders had spent months practicing their fire plans, creating zones where no inch of sand was safe. What made the German defense so effective wasn't just the fortifications, it was the doctrine behind them. Rommel had insisted on a forward defense, believing that the invasion had to be stopped on the beaches. Unlike other German commanders who wanted to keep mobile reserves inland, Rommel positioned his best troops right on the coastline, ready to destroy the invasion force as it landed. Heinz Severloh, a 20-year-old German machine gunner positioned at WN 62, resistance point 62, later claimed to have fired over 12,000 rounds from his MG 42 and an additional 400 rounds from his rifle during the morning of June 6th. From his elevated position, he could see every movement on the beach below. Years later, he would say, "It was definitely a shooting gallery. For me, it was target practice." By mid-morning, the situation was critical. The American assault had stalled. 2 entire Ranger battalions, tasked with scaling the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc to destroy German guns, had found the guns already moved and were now fighting for survival behind enemy lines. The beach was littered with burning vehicles and the bodies of American soldiers. The invasion was on the verge of failure at Omaha. So how did this happen? How did a meticulously planned operation go so wrong? The answer lies in a series of cascading failures that transformed a difficult assault into a killing funnel. First, the geography of Omaha created natural choke points that the Germans exploited to maximum effect. Second, the intelligence failure meant the Americans faced a battle-hardened division rather than the static unit they expected. Third, the failed bombardment left German defences largely intact. Fourth, the difficult swimming conditions caused many landing craft to miss their assigned sectors, mixing up units and destroying the carefully planned assault sequence. Fifth, the loss of most amphibious tanks meant the infantry had no armoured support against the German fortifications. The duplex-drive Dday tanks, modified Sherman tanks with flotation screens, were supposed to swim ashore and provide fire support. Of the 32 Dday tanks launched at Omaha, 27 sank almost immediately in the rough seas, taking their crews with them. The 5 that made it ashore were quickly knocked out by German anti-tank guns. Without this armoured support, the infantry was exposed and vulnerable. Transition to the turning point. By 9:00 a.m. the invasion was failing. Commanders on the beach were considering evacuation, but then something remarkable happened. Small groups of soldiers, led by junior officers and NCOs, began to organize. They realized that staying on the beach meant certain death. The only way to survive was to move forward. Cut to reenactment of soldiers scaling the bluffs. In Sector Easy Red, Brigadier General Norman Cotter, assistant commander of the 29th Division, walked the beach under fire, organizing groups of soldiers and finding paths through the bluffs. His famous words, "There are only two kinds of people who are staying on this beach, those who are already dead and those who are going to die," rallied the survivors. Small groups began to find and exploit weak points in the German defences. The turning point came when engineers and infantry managed to blow gaps through the barbed wire and minefields at the base of the bluffs. In Sector WWII, Company C of the 2nd Ranger Battalion found a draw that was less heavily defended and began to scale the bluffs. By 9:30 a.m., they had reached the top and were engaging the German defenders from above. This created the first foothold on the bluffs. What happened at Omaha was a testament to individual initiative and leadership. When the plan failed, small groups of soldiers adapted, overcame, and found ways to break out of the killing funnel. By the end of the day, American forces had secured a tenuous foothold 1 to 2 kilometers inland, but at a terrible cost. The human cost was staggering. Of the approximately 2,400 American casualties at Omaha on D-Day, nearly half were killed. Some companies suffered casualty rates exceeding 90%. The 1st Infantry Division, known as the Big Red One, lost over 1,000 men. The 29th Division lost nearly 800. The 5th Ranger Battalion lost 76 of its 200 men. These numbers don't include the psychological trauma that would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives. Years later, survivors would struggle to articulate the horror of that day. Many never spoke of it at all. The experience at Omaha Beach was so traumatic that it became buried beneath myth and sanitized narratives. The reality was too painful to confront directly. The lessons of Omaha Beach would change amphibious warfare forever. Future operations would emphasize more thorough intelligence gathering, more effective pre-landing bombardments, better coordination between naval and ground forces, and more specialized equipment for breaching fortifications. The painful lessons learned on that stretch of sand would save lives in subsequent operations. Cut to modern-day view of the American cemetery at Normandy. Today, the American cemetery overlooking Omaha Beach contains the graves of 9,386 American military dead. Most of those buried there lost their lives in the D-Day landings and subsequent operations. Row upon row of white crosses and stars of David stand as silent testament to the cost of breaking Hitler's Atlantic Wall. The dark reason Omaha Beach was a perfect killing funnel wasn't just the German defenses or the difficult terrain, it was the convergence of geography, intelligence failures, planning oversights, and the brutal reality of war against a prepared enemy. What was meant to be a coordinated assault became a desperate struggle for survival. The heroes of Omaha weren't just those who received medals for bravery, but the ordinary soldiers who, when faced with impossible odds, found the courage to move forward. Their sacrifice transformed a killing beach into a foothold for freedom in Europe. The next time you see footage of the D-Day landings, remember what you now know, that behind the heroic narrative lies a more complex and painful truth about the price of victory and the nature of war. History is rarely as simple as we're taught to believe. If you found this perspective valuable, consider sharing it with others who seek to understand the deeper truths behind our past.